Hello and welcome back to another Monster Monday, a series where I draw a creature from D&D and I talk about its lore and its history and what it's like to fight. Today's monster is a suggestion from Lee Chamberlain, and they were the first person to suggest mimics. So that's what I'll be talking about today. One quick thing before we get started. I mentioned in my last video that we're approaching the anniversary of my channel. I will have been doing this for one whole year on September 1st. The closest video day, the closest Friday to that will be September the 7th. And on that day, I'll be hosting a giveaway of a copy of Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. If you'd like a copy of this book, all you need to do is email me a copy of a drawing that you've done of a D&D monster or maybe a homebrew creature in the spirit of Monster Mondays. I'll be featuring your artwork on the channel, and the winner will get a copy of Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. So keep an eye out for that. My email is in the description box below, but in case you don't see that, it's info.arcaneforge@gmail.com. I'll also be doing some question and answer stuff, so if you have a question for me, make sure to leave it in the comments below with the brackets video question around it, so I know that you want me to answer it there rather than in the comments below. Anyway guys, let's get back to the video, and back to mimics. Mimics have to be one of the most versatile, paranoia-inducing, and memorable creatures to ever be a part of this game. I'd go as far to say that next to the Beholder, mimics are probably the most iconic creatures associated with D&D. They've become so intensely entrenched in the nature of fantasy, games, and literature. They're so popular that they've appeared in all sorts of media ever since their debut appearance in the original Monster Manual for 1st edition in 1977. They've appeared in Final Fantasy, they've appeared in the game Terraria, and probably most notably Dark Souls, where they scared the absolute hell out of me with their enormous gangly arms and legs. It was definitely not what I was expecting. But they've been in dozens of other game franchises, as well as famously accompanying Rincewind in Terry Pratchett's Discworld novels as luggage, a sentient chest of treasure with dozens of tiny little feet, all scurrying, its whole body constructed of sapient pearwood, a rare and magical material of incalculable value. And yet, for all that love, scarce little is actually known about these creatures, although some light has been shed on them through Ed Greenwood's Ecology of Mimics article in 1983's Dragon magazine. But that's really the last time anyone wrote about these creatures, to be honest. So using the few sources I could find, I think we should dive right in. Asking first, what are mimics? The long and short is that they're medium-sized monstrosities with a purely neutral alignment, and they're shapeshifters. Unfortunately, the nature of them being monstrosities means that they are perhaps in some way magical, but I could find no reference as to whether they were created, summoned, conjured, constructed, or some kind of creature from another plane. They're most frequently spotted as large chests of gold and treasure, luring adventurers in with enticing and wondrous promises of treasure. Mimics bide their time only to shift and morph, to grow large, jagged teeth and a plethora of glimmering eyes, leaping to strike when an adventurer has their guard down, and quickly devouring them. But despite constantly looking like chests, almost always being depicted as a chest with teeth and eyes, they can look like absolutely anything, and they're not restricted to one disguise per lifetime. They can shift pretty flawlessly. Provided they stay still as well, they are almost indistinguishable from the real thing they're imitating. Back in the early days of D&D, mimics could only change their appearance to resemble wood or stone. There later became a metal mimic, a sword mimic, and so on and so forth, things like that allowed mimics to resemble metallic surfaces, but initially they could only turn into stone and wood, and this caused Ed Greenwood in his Ecology article to say that the transformation of a mimic occurs when they pump strange chemicals, a bit like an octopus's chromatophores, or a squid's chromatophores, but they pump these chemicals between various layers of their skin and change it from their traditional mottled stony grey, which is what they would look like if they weren't changing form, to a warped and grainy wood-like texture. However, since 1st edition, the powers of a mimic have greatly improved. They could be the sword in your hilt, they could be the sandwich in your hand, the door you plan to open, or even the suit of armour to your left. You may be wearing one right now. I've heard that over its lifespan a mimic will grow from perhaps the size of a door handle to the size of even something like a forest, and could imitate every single tree inside, or even the whole dungeon that your players are currently exploring. So long as they remain perfectly still, their false appearance ability means that even with a crit on a perception check, it'll only tell you something along the lines of the thing that you're looking at. Perhaps the throne that you're examining maybe looks a little off, or perhaps that it's warm to the touch like a living creature, which could easily be passed off under the assumption that someone has sat on that throne before. It's widely believed that unlike a doppelganger or a changeling, however, mimics have no particular true form. They are always assuming the form of a nearby object of their choosing, morphing seamlessly between any form that they desire and attacking when the time is right. Traditionally, mimics are a challenge rating 2 creature whose shape-shifting is their primary ability. But aside from this, they are immune to acid damage and being knocked prone, I'd imagine, because they could potentially be without any particular form, so knocking them over is pretty irrelevant. And the acid damage is something that we'll talk about in just a second. They have 2 attacks. One of them is a 1d8 bludgeoning damage attack called Pseudopod, which is when they spontaneously generate an arm-like growth out of whatever form they've decided to take, and they strike an opponent, beating them over the head, perhaps as they are latched around them. And they also have a bite attack that comes from wherever the mimic has decided to put its mouth, which deals 1d8 piercing and 1d8 acid damage too. Usually when a creature digests something, dealing acid damage, the acid damage occurs once the creature is swallowed, like with a Tarrasque, for example, or a Kraken. However, a mimic's bite is likely a little bit different. Being essentially without a rigid anatomy, a mimic has no stomach or digestive tract. Its mouth may essentially not really lead anywhere in particular, but it's still able to absorb nutrients through it. This is an organic creature despite what it looks like. It reminds me a little bit more of the vice-like jaws of the Venus flytrap, who clenches tightly and seals around unsuspecting insects that land on its very sensitive mouth-like leaves. When their hair-like triggers, which cover the entire surface of their leaves, pick up vibrations, the leaf clinches around it and literally seals around the creature. And this leaf has no throat-like hole to absorb its prey, but now, having trapped its dinner, the entire surface fills with digestive acidic enzymes which allow the leaves to absorb the slowly liquefying remains of whatever insect has unfortunately wandered through into this trap via osmosis. And similarly, mimics are great trappers. They constantly release a kind of organic adhesive which can cause the mimic to climb vertical surfaces and hang from ceilings to drop down onto their prey when they least expect it. Could be the stalactite hanging from the ceiling above, or the chandelier even. But this sticky stuff, this mucus maybe, that the mimic produces, also means that any creature, huge or smaller, or even any object, including the weapons that you choose to hit it with, that touch this mimic's body, is then stuck to it until such a time as the mimic chooses to release it, because it has innate control over this. This is how it manages to move and walk around. It makes one part of it sticky and then contorts its body and then releases the other side, so it can push itself forwards or climb up surfaces. But if you're stuck, you have disadvantage to grapple checks to escape its clutches. Additionally, while grappled, the mimic has advantage on all attacks. In Greenwood's article, he postulates that the many eyes that the mimic seems to form might be its weakness. In this case, they might be very sensitive, and a DM might allow you, although there's nothing in any rules about it, to break free more easily of this thing's clutches if you poke it in one of its many eyes. Kobold Press's Map Mimic from their Tome of Beasts utilizes this sticky substance in a really fascinating way by allowing this mimic to disguise itself as a seemingly innocuous page, scroll, book or map, and once read, the mimic will leap out at the reader's face like a xenomorph facehugger or a half-life head crab and constrict around the victim's head, binding it, blinding it, and suffocating them. No doubt this also causes some pretty memorable scars when the well-intentioned but not particularly smart barbarian tries to save their suffocating friend with an axe blow to their face. But whether it's Wizards of the Coast canon or not, the Map Mimic has some interesting information surrounding this weird adhesive mucus that mimics surround themselves in. I hope you'll forgive me from reading directly from the book here, but what it says is, Mimic adhesive is not just a powerful means of trapping prey, it also contains millions of microscopic larvae that feed on flesh. Most of the larvae are consumed by the mimic when it eats. Mimics are either unaware of this, or they're indifferent to the fact that they routinely cannibalize their own offspring. A few manage to survive, however, by adhering to the clothing or equipment of someone who escaped from a fully grown mimic's attack. These larvae hitch a ride on their host far from the dungeon, cavern, or ruins of their birth. There they drop off and grow into worm-like mimic young called map mimics. In time, map mimics grow into typical mimics. So whatever mysterious circumstances caused mimics to be, we know that might be how they reproduce. Another interesting aspect of the map mimic is its intelligence. It has a 13, i.e. a +1 intelligence, and although it doesn't know any languages, it's far more intelligent than the 5 intelligence, i.e. a -3 intelligence, that a traditional mimic in the monster manual has. Although, in the monster manual, we're told that mimics can develop over time and become cunning and manipulating and capable of talking and bargaining. Map mimics apparently utilize this by changing the form of their surface so that they might indicate a map that would potentially lead to treasure. This map entices adventurers and travelers, even if it shifts from time to time, but all it really does is show the location of a large treasure chest, which happens to be yet another mimic, working symbiotically for a pincer attack. And that's not the first time that we've heard of something like this, really, because if you think of Tom Riddle's diary from the Harry Potter series, a book which has sentience and can write back, or Vela from Trudy Canavan's fantastic thieves' magic story, there are intelligent books with some vestige of a mind and an ability to respond to questions by changing their form, by writing responses inside or speaking to the user's mind. It could be a fantastic companion, therefore, to have an intelligent mimic capable not of speaking per se, but knowing the language of common and being able to respond to someone who asks it questions by writing in a diary, perhaps. But there are even more possibilities for intelligent mimics. Make a whole new dimension or a horror kind of vibe to your D&D game, because if a mimic is intelligent enough to maybe make sounds and imitate language, you could make a mimic disguised as a child's crib or a pram that will cry like a baby, enticing people nearby in the darkness, or, scaring the hell out of them. They could take the form of a staircase that leads downstairs at night. You could be awoken in the middle of the night, hearing a loved one, perhaps a parent, calling you to come downstairs in the middle of the night, only to pass this parent awake in their room, them saying that they can hear the voice too, realizing only then that the entire staircase is just another mimic. Or perhaps if you're playing in a modern day setting, maybe the mimic is a mobile phone that could imitate the people that it's heard you call it from, could give you false information and lead you to dangerous traps. Or simply, once you hold it up to your ear, it might bite that off. So mimics have a fantastic number of possibilities. If your players' characters are hot-headed or quick to rush into danger, they don't like to plan and plot, but if they make rash decisions and they don't plan where they're going, introduce the fear of mimics into your D&D game. Say that they could be absolutely anywhere, they could be all over the place. You'll have your players worrying for the rest of their lives that they might be carrying mimics on them, walking into mimic traps, opening doors that are mimics. You can entirely change how a game is played just by introducing the thought of mimics into your campaign. But anyway, guys, this has been another fantastic Monster Monday. Thank you so much for joining me and for suggesting the idea of mimics. If you have a monster that you'd like to see me draw, please make sure to leave it down in the comments below, and I will add it to my ever-growing to-draw list. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave it a little thumbs up, perhaps favorite it, and share it with your friends so that they are aware of the hidden horrors that lie around every corner, potentially in any given dungeon. If you like this video and you'd like to see more, please make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the little bell icon, because I release videos every week. And everything you can do like that really helps this channel to grow, because we are still only little map mimic larvae ourselves, and we need all the help that we can get. So thank you very much for your support. If you loved this drawing and you'd like a copy of it for yourself, please make sure to head over to my Patreon page, where backers at certain levels get a digital or a physical print of every Monster Monday that I do each month. Otherwise, guys, please make sure to send in your comments, your questions for my anniversary video, and also email me your drawings of monsters for a chance to win a copy of Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. Until next time guys, trust nothing, no object is safe, and happy monster hunting.